A bunch of girls picked enough apples so that each of them could have 6 apples and there will not be any apples left. While the girls were dividing the apples among themselves, 5 boys showed up. If they now divide the apples equally among everyone, the girls and the boys, each individual will get only 4 apples and 2 apples will be left over. How many girls were there in the group? What I have on this slide is the same problem in smaller font. Of course, it's a typical, in the US, this would be considered a typical algebra problem. Many people would start by defining a variable, for instance, by saying that let the number of girls be x, and then construct an equation and then solve the equation. But we'll see if we can solve it without using variables, just conceptually, just trying to understand the problem scenario and see if we can solve it without any equations. And why would we want to do that? Well, if we can do it, then the problem is accessible to younger students. So a 5th, 6th grader who hasn't been taught how to solve equations should be able to do a problem like this. So let's see what's going on here. In a word problem, half the battle is understanding the problem. Let's make sure we genuinely understand what's going on. We had a bunch of girls and they got some apples, and if they each got 6 apples, all the apples will be gone. There won't be anything left. However, while the girls were dividing the apples, 5 boys showed up, and the boys and girls, if they divide the apples equally, now each person, either a boy or a girl, would get 4 apples and 2 apples will be left over. How many girls were there? So let's generally try to understand what's going on. What's going on here is we have 5. Let's focus on the boys for now. We have 5 boys. If each of them get 4 apples, there will be 20 apples for the boys. So altogether, the boys get 20 apples. Let's write it down. That's important. Altogether, the boys get 20 apples. Okay? And of course, 2 apples are left over. And there are 2 apples left behind. Okay? So basically, what's going on here is this 2 and this 20, that's 22. 22 apples are coming from the girls. Note, originally the girls were supposed to get 6 apples. In the new situation, they would get 4 apples. So they're each losing 2 apples. So all the apples that the girls are going to lose are going to be accounted by the apples that the boys are receiving and the 2 apples that are left behind. So we are concluding that we know that each girl is losing 2 apples. She's getting 2 fewer apples. If each girl is losing 2 apples, how many girls would have to lose 2 apples so that you get 22 apples? And the answer is 11. Let's see if we can write it down. Answer is 22 divided by 2 is equal to 11. So there must be 11 girls. If you had 11 girls and each girl lost 2 apples, you would have 22 apples, and you can use those 22 apples to give each of the 5 boys 4 apples, and you would have accounted for 20 apples, and there would be 2 left over. So the answer is 11. See if that makes any sense.